submit all. So I'm just getting the timings ready, guys. I'll keep you right with your timings if it looks like you're getting.
So good afternoon, everybody that is joining us both from Aberdeen, Guyana and around the world, and welcome to the 4th annual Aberdeen Guyana Gateway. First two obviously were held in person in 2020 and 2021 has been held digitally, but it's been great to keep the show on the road and keep so many people engaged. So there's a very large audience today, so we're just giving a couple of minutes for everyone to join. We actually have a record Gateway audience today of the 28th Gateway we've run, the 4th Guyana, and it is got a very large amount of registrations to participate today and tomorrow. So we're just letting everybody in, and if you just all make yourself comfortable and make sure that you are out of the waiting room, and we're just flushing people out of the waiting room into the audience. So once again, good afternoon and welcome to the 4th annual Aberdeen Guyana Gateway, and the second virtual digital one. And huge thanks to everyone that's given their time today to participate in the 2021 Aberdeen Guyana Gateway. So without further ado, we've got quite a lot of speakers today, and I'm just going to quickly highlight. Stacey, can we just move on what the lineup? We've got some housekeeping first of all. So housekeeping, obviously, because of the very large audience today, if you could please keep your microphone on mute, and you can put questions into the chat box, or you can raise your hand, or unmute to ask a question. But we'll be doing the questions at the end. But feel free to put questions in the chat box throughout, and then we'll come back to them and make sure they're covered. And of course, please do feel free to connect with myself or Stacey on LinkedIn. You'll find both of us there, and delighted to speak to any of you out with the meeting as well about any questions you've got. Okay, Stacey, we'll go through the speakers. If I could just outline our speakers today. I'll be introducing the Lord Provost of Aberdeen shortly. We'll then be handing over to Bobby Gasai, who today has two hats. He's representing the Department of Natural Resources in the Guyana government today, and will be speaking on their behalf, and also the University of Aberdeen, where he is a PhD as a petroleum economist. We'll then be handing over to Adam Gibson, the VP of the Western Hemisphere for OES, Asset Integrity Management. We'll be speaking to John Lowe, the UK Director of TLC, Transportation and Logistics Consulting. We'll be speaking to Francis Kiernan, the founder and CEO of Ibis Energy. And then last but by no means least, we'll be joined later in the call by Alistair Rutledge, a Scot who is currently the president of ExxonMobil in Guyana. So we've got, as I say, 6 speakers to get through, all with great content, and then Q&A at the end. But without further ado, I would like to hand over to the Lord Provost of Aberdeen, Barney Crockett. Lord Provost, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Brett, and thanks to everybody who's joining us today. I've been delighted to see the growth and links between Aberdeen and Guyana over the last 4 years and more. And I'm particularly pleased that I've been to Guyana, been to Georgetown, and seen the great prospects for that country. And I very much hope that Aberdeen can be relevant to all of what's going on in Guyana and all of the progress that we're going to see being made. I think the New York Times described Aberdeen as the city with one foot on the seabed. We are interested in everything that happens under the sea all over the world. And but great to see Aberdeen companies being to to the fore in reaching out to Guyana and working in partnership with Guyanese. I think that we're probably the most mobile city in the world of oil and gas, with people who know how to accommodate others, to get on with others from every background in every part of the world. And in particular, I hope that Aberdeen companies can play their role in building local skills and enhancing local abilities of the people of Guyana. I think that we have our companies first and foremost, but also we have, I hope, great educational and training organizations. Fantastic to see Bobby here, who I've known for so long, who's can give you some evidence of that. But all of them are wanting to work more closely with Guyana and learn from Guyana, as well as pass on information. I think that just to say a little bit about Aberdeen, I mentioned Bobby already, but I bumped in, I saw in the street someone who was looking at me in my chain, and I approached them, and they were someone from Guyana who had attended the University of Aberdeen in the 1960s and has now, been living back in Guyana, came back here to see it with the start of oil and gas. And also when I was very young, I remember that great son of Guyana. I do remember him from the time, Rowan Kanhai, who lived here for a little while and was our great star at the time. As well as our universities, we also have the council itself, which I hope is hoping to build and wanting to build good links with Georgetown and with Guyana. I think that we have a memorandum of understanding. We're keen to see progress on that and new things added. We have, very interesting promises of police cooperation between the areas, and also we hope maybe things like planning, waste treatment. So not just the things that are most obviously oil and gas. So I think we're going to have a fantastically interesting mini conference here. I'm really looking forward to taking part. And please, anybody feel very welcome to contact me about anything in the future. Thanks very much to the organisers and everybody for coming along. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lord Provost, always for giving the official welcome from the city of Aberdeen to Guyana and around the world, and for setting the scene for today. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Bobby Gasai, who, as I said earlier, has two hats today. He will be speaking on behalf of the Government of Guyana as their Department of Natural Resources, and he will also be giving a petroleum economist's view on where the market is at in 2021. I'm delighted to have known Bobby over the last 4 years as the Gateway has grown, and I've learnt a lot of very valuable information from him. So Bobby, without further ado, I hope you like that I've got my tartan tie on, by the way, and I look forward to hearing your presentation. The floor is yours, Bobby.
Thank you very much, Brett, the team at Granite PR. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this part of the world joining us. A few familiar faces, of course, who are part of the beginning of this Aberdeen Guyana Gateway. Francis Kiernan, who of course has played a major role in all of this, support by the Lord Provost over the years, and of course friends from Guyana who have been supporting and traveled to Aberdeen to be a part of this, including the Private Sector Commission, the Georgian Chamber of Commerce, and others. My presentation today, I wanted to give an update on where we are as it relates to the offshore development, and also talk about the future development of other activities in Guyana. As you know now, it's a little bit more than just talking about the petroleum side of things, but it's all about the energy development of economies in transition such as Guyana. So Stacey, if I have the screen to share, then please allow me.
Yes, you have permission.
Thank you. Can we all see my screen?
It's just taking a moment, Bobby, but it says you started screen sharing. That's it. It's there now.
It's there. Okay, great. Excellent. Great. So we are all very familiar with the Guyanese economy as it relates to oil and gas by now. We've known the history of Guyana since 2015. Oil was first discovered, 2019, first oil in December 20th, 2019. Then we moved into first export of oil in January of 2020. Government's share of oil occurred in February of 2020. And as such, the economy has been moving forward as an oil and gas producing and exporting nation. We are also familiar with the fact that all of this is taking place in the Stabroek Block. The map that you see here is a representation of the offshore development of Guyana with some focus areas on nearshore as well as closer to onshore. Of course, the Stabroek Block has been described in many different forms, but it's an economic engine of growth for Guyana simply because of the amount of commercial discoveries that have been made to date, and of course, the expected level of reserves that are in there. So we wanted to present this chart to you, this image to you, because I think over the years, we've all seen many different indication of the offshore development in Guyana from other external publications. But of course, this is one from the government of Guyana. So as you can see, the size of the Stabroek Block, and of course, there are other activities taking place in the Kaieteur as well as the Kanji Block. There are some amount of activities in the Orenduk Block as well as the Kanuku Block by other operators, aside from the current one who's in Guyana, SO Exploration Production Guyana Limited. There are expected to be more activities taking place in the Demerara, the Corentyne, and the Berbice Block moving forward. But at the same time, one of the representation we wanted to show here, there are areas for future development, such as Block C, the Pomeroon Block, and the other areas which will be identified over time. Part of the government's initiative is to present these in a more transparent and market-oriented manner, one that will allow for greater interest by both local investors as well as external investors, as perhaps the next move is to do some form of an auction or a bidding round in the near future. Moving forward, we know that Guyana is looking towards the 2022, 2024, 2026, and thereafter to have other fields being developed, other fields coming on stream into the production. And I will talk about those a little as we go into the presentation. Now, just to give you a little history of Guyana, not to talk too much about this because we're all very familiar about this by now. At least I know, Brett, for the time that I've presented on this Aberdeen Guyana Gateway and other similar forum, I've spoken about the advancement of the economics in the field, as I would like to see, and how investor-friendly it is. So from 2015 to 2021, in the Stabroek Block, there have been 20 commercial discoveries. There have been a few other discoveries which have not been termed commercial, but there are 20 discoveries. And at this point in time, we are expected to see over 9 billion barrels of oil equivalent. Currently, it's estimated to around 9, but given the recent discoveries, it is expected to be over that number. Now, Liza Phase 1 is currently in operation. Liza Phase 1 has achieved peak oil, 120,000 barrels of oil per day. Liza Phase 2 is coming on stream rapidly. And of course, we expect to see Payara, which is a third development, to be on stream by 2024. And of course, the operators have already identified that the Yellowtail development will be the fourth one, which will come on stream 25-26. Now, if you put all of this into context, by 25-26, Guyana are expected to be producing over 500 million barrels of oil per day, with 3 FPSOs and others coming on stream. By 2027, we should see more FPSOs out there. The investors in the Stabroek Block have already indicated that over the next 10 years, they expect to see 10 FPSOs with a related number of development taking place in this basin alone. And we're just talking about the Stabroek Block here. We're not talking about Kaichur, Kanji, Kanuku, Orinduk, or even the Demerara, the Currentine, or the Berbice Block, which we, in Guyana, we hope that there are other discoveries coming on stream over the next 2-3 years moving forward, given the expected levels of drilling activities that take place. But what is interesting to note is that whilst at the same time we are advancing the development and the extraction of the resources, the oil demand is changing. We are seeing the world is moving out of a pandemic in many countries right now. We have seen that the oil price reached $75 yesterday. It is expected. Some analysts, some companies, and some producers are expecting it to reach between that point of $75 to $100. We'll see what happens. We all know the volatility of the oil price. We all know the volatility of the oil market. I presented on this last year when we were in the greater period of the lockdown. 2021 is termed the year of the vaccine. So as economies are developing, we are seeing that there is still a drive and a demand for petroleum-related products. Some international agencies have already determined that oil will continue to rise, the demand for oil will continue to rise into the late 2030s, and particularly driven by transportation needs and petrochemicals. But we all know the world is also changing in an era of energy transition and the emphasis on alternatives. The good side of this is that the Guyanese economy is not only about the oil and gas sector, it's also about the energy industry all around, because we do have a good energy mix. We have the potential for hydroelectric power as well as solar and wind power. And these are all under considerations at various levels of government. But to give you a little bit more indication of the Stabroek Block, this is where a pictorial representation of the discoveries to date. We haven't updated with the last one, which is the long-tail tree, which was recently discovered here. So we have seen that there have been a number of great activities taking place. Ever so often, there are more vessels offshore. There are more activities taking place. There is opportunities for the development of this entire Stabroek Block from not only the operator's point of view, but from also the ways in which the local market can be developed. And of course, I can talk a lot about local content, but one of the things we want to emphasize here is the potential for the development of the supply bases in Guyana and the development for the supply chain to service the offshore industry as well as the related sectors of the oil and gas sector in the Guyana. Of course, we have seen over the last 5 years, there have been an aggressive development of the Stabroek Block. We know by 2027, 28 moving forward, all up to 2030, you will have the yellowtail as well as the other discoveries to come on stream. It is expected that Guyana will be producing somewhere between 750,000 barrels of oil to 1 billion barrels of oil over the next 10 years. That is a great economic impact for a country just 6 years ago that was not producing any hydrocarbons resources. In fact, it was an economy that did not even have an offshore industry. We have a shipping industry, we have a fishing industry, but we don't have an offshore industry like the one that is being developed right now and the one that will continue to grow over the next few years. You know, in 2020, the IMF had predicted Guyana would be the fastest growing economy in the world. In 2021, it's expected to be the same thing with double-digit growth, maybe somewhere between 20 to 30%. But all of that is quite exciting for an economy like Guyana, but at the same time, you have to put policies in place to ensure that your economy is not taken by the effects of the Dutch disease, as well as those effects of the resource core syndrome. So while we look at these two charts and we see the fast and impactful growth of the offshore development, we must also take into account what a government must put in place to ensure that it garners and it hampers any negative effect, but it garners the above-ground resources to the best of their ability. So the exploration activities in Guyana have been seen to be one that is successful. Other blocks that are there for development in the Kaichur, Kanji, Kanuku, or Orinduk block, it is expected to see some level of commercial discovery moving forward towards the late 2021 and into 2022 and 2023. Now, if we look at where Guyana is located on any map, you would know that we are part of what is called the Guyana Basin. We have Guyana, Suriname, and French Guyana. Suriname recently made 3 grand discoveries, and they've already made a decision to have development or production by 2025, which is something they want to replicate similar to Guyana. Guyana discovered oil in 2015. By the end of 2019, they were producing oil. Suriname is hoping to have the same time period of development and production of their activities. So we're looking at 2 mega economies moving forward in the era of oil and gas. Of course, we would want to make sure that Guyana continues to advance in commercial discoveries in different blocks so that we can continue to develop our side of the Guyana Basin. But at the same time, we were looking towards our neighboring country to see where we can help from an economic cooperation level, as well as where we can provide any assistance from a business side. So there is the potential for collaboration between the 2 countries from both the private sector level as well as the public sector. So the resources within this basin, of course, in the early 2000s, the United States Geological Service had indicated that there is about 13.2 billion barrels of oil within that basin. It is expected that the next survey will be done by next year. There was one that was supposed to take place in 2020, but of course we were all in the great lockdown, and of course that did not take place. But when the next survey is done for these basins, it will show that we have a potential of to double the resources that are available, and not only the oil resources but also the gas resources, because this is also something that we are looking at, not only in terms of associated gas, but where there are gas fields themselves to develop. I'll talk a little bit about the gas to energy project when we come towards the end, which is the next big project that the country is working on. Now, just to go back a little bit to the economics of Guyana's oil and gas discovery, it is very important to know that the success rate from exploration to finding a commercial discovery is quite high, which allows investors to have greater confidence, which allows for them to model their economics and their finances in terms of the internal rate of return, the expected net present value moving forward to be positive, as well as the payback period to be within a good time period that allows for profitability over time and cost recovery to be undertaken in a very fast manner. Now, with oil price advancing beyond $70, this allows for great investors' confidence in the Guyanese economy, as well as in the development of these mega projects. We have seen that Guyana as a country, the break-even price for Liza Phase 1, Phase 2, as well as Payara are all under $40 a barrel. And that's using different prices. So once price is above that lucrative level, which we are seeing, we expect to see more investment coming into the economy. There have been different independent studies and quotes that determine that over the next 10 years between Guyana and Suriname, there's expected to be X amount of billions of US dollars of investment. But this can only occur when you look at what are the factors that will impact the type of discoveries, that will impact the type of development. Take Guyana, for example. We currently have 1 shore base, but there is the expectation that others will come on stream. Those of you who have visited Georgetown, you know the city, you know where the main corridor for transportation is, you know where the shore base is located, but you also see the potential for other areas of future growth and development of the country. Of course, when it comes to local content, we want to make sure that majority of the services over the next 10 years are provided in country. We know that there are going to be activities that cannot necessarily happen in Guyana because of the mechanism, because of the technology, and because of the skills that might be needed, but we would like to see some of that being transferred to the country. Now, just to re-emphasize the point one more time, the Stabroek Block, of course, is a world-class petroleum reserve. We heard this in 2015. Guyana realized it around 2016, 2017. And as we continue to see the discoveries and the advancement of the development of each of the projects taking place, we are beginning to understand what that concept meant in 2015 and where it has taken us over the next 5 years. Just to give you representation of the three fields of development that will occur by 2024. You can see the economics simply here is that, the next two projects, Lisa Phase 2, which will have the FPSO Unity, and Prayara, which will have the FPSO Prosperity. That's why we like to use the term on the road to prosperity, because once we get there, we are over that mark of 500 million barrels of oil being produced in an economy that does not have at least 1 million of its own citizens here. Of course, by now that number is changing with the changing dynamics of immigration and migration in different parts of the world. But the point to note here is that you're looking at the per capita oil being produced in a country which is expected to be one of the highest, if not the highest, in the world by 2024. So looking at the situation with OPEC and non-OPEC country, you can already determine where Guyana would fall within that spectrum over the next 4 to 5 years. I wanted to mention briefly a little on the gas to energy project. This is a project that is being committed to by both the operator here in Guyana as well as the government of Guyana. There are a series of activities that are currently being undertaken by both parties, where there are commitments, agreements, and alignments to ensure that there are the full spectrum of activities that relate to feasibility studies, environmental assessments, and commercial alignment are being undertaken at this initial stage. Of course, that will take us into the designing of the project in its entirety. The project will be out for public viewing by the Environmental Protection Agency within the coming weeks. And then, you're looking at both activities from the moving of laying of the pipeline from Lisa Phase 1 to onshore, and then moving across country to the area that is designated for the industrial development, as well as the gas to power plant that will allow for cheaper electricity in Guyana. Now, it is expected that once we have this project on stream by 2024, the price of electricity in the country will be reduced by about 80%. Currently, some of you may already know that one of the biggest factors that hinders Guyana's commercial as well as manufacturing and, of course, residential growth is the cost of electricity, the supply of electricity, and the efficiency of the transmission of electricity in Guyana. So this project of gas to energy is going to change the way in which we see ourselves as an industrial country. Once we have this project on stream, you can imagine that Guyana will move into more heavy manufacturing and as such into industrialization. So with the programs and the policies that are being put in place, it is going to be one that shows that Guyana will move from a country that does light manufacturing into one that will open up into greater industrial space that will allow for more manufacturing of goods that are needed not only for the oil and gas industry, but also for the other sectors of the economy, whether that is related to heavy manufacturing or the agricultural sector or the provision of value-added goods and services in some of our traditional mining and forestry sectors that we have here. Of course, just to make the point that we should all be familiar by now that Guyana is a heavily abundant natural resource economy. We are now working on becoming a natural resource wealthy country as we are able to put different systems in place so that we can be able to capture the necessary economic rent from the oil and gas industry, and then transition those into other socio-economic projects, whether those are in the form of forward or backward linkages, and of course, the development of the financial market. So the gas to energy project, of course, will be looking at how we develop our petroleum gas resources, how we develop different gas plants. And this, of course, will be undertaken with looking at, there are factors, of course, which both the government and the operator will have to look at, such as the risk of this investment, land acquisition, the cost to move the pipeline across the country. And of course, there's a commitment to 2024 by all parties. So it is in the initial stage by now, which is the coming towards the end of the first half of 2021, moving into the period of where there are going to be more effective decisions being made as it relates to moving the project forward and ensuring that we are committed to that 2024 timeline.
Bobby, just about a minute or two left, if that's okay.
Yes, thanks. Just one main slide more. Just to give a highlight on the systematic governance framework for the oil and gas industry in Guyana. There is the Vice President who has responsibility for energy, the Minister of Natural Resources, and of course that his main organizations within his ministry are the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission that also deals with the day-to-day regulation of the oil and gas industry. There's also the legal aspect of the development of a vibrant and modern legislation for the oil and gas sector, followed by managing of the fiscal resources through the Ministry of Finance and the Bank of Guyana, as well as the Guyana Revenue Authority. And then there are other data and technical managerial areas such as the Bureau of Statistics, the Guyana National Bureau of Standards, who are the ones that measure for the oil that is being produced offshore for the government. And then, of course, we do take our ecological considerations very carefully through the Environmental Protection Agency. And all of these organizations, these are just some of the main organizations that work together in managing the petroleum sector of the Guyanese economy. And with that, I want to say thank you all for giving me the time to explain a little on the development of Guyana's offshore potential, the energy market that we are advancing here in Guyana, and of course, the focus for the future as we move forward. Thank you.
Bobby, thank you very much for giving us the overview today of the Guyana basin, and really appreciate the petroleum economics perspective, and also just you representing the Ministry of Natural Resources today. So thank you for wearing both hats today. It was a really interesting update to look at the activity thus far and what we can expect in the decade ahead. So thank you very much for that, Bobby. So without further ado, I think what always helps in these gateway programs is to give real live examples of businesses that have been there and done it. And our next two speakers have been carefully chosen. They're supporting us today, which we're very grateful for, but they are also actually explored the Guyana market and gone as far as setting up in country, incorporating in country, and supporting local content, and just really seeing the journey through. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Adam Gibson, who is the Vice President of the Western Hemisphere for OES Asset Integrity Management. Adam's actually joining us from Guyana today. He's there at the moment, and he's going to share a bit about the journey that OES has had in exploring, setting up, and engaging locally. Adam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Brett. First of all, can I just double check everyone can hear me?
We can, yes.
First of all, thank you, Brett, Stacey, and Granite PR for organising this great event. Obviously, all the speakers and most importantly, all the delegates tuning in. Hopefully I have something interesting for you today, which is a successful business story of a company in Guyana, to hopefully guide and inspire any international companies looking at and making the move over to Guyana. You know, this is Guyana's time. This is their moment in history. So hopefully take some notes on this and for some guidance and some inspiration. Stacey, do you want me to control the slides?
Yes, you can. If you want to pull up your slides, you'll be able to control them. There you go.
Great. I'm just going to double check everyone can see my screen.
We can, yes.
Perfect. Okay, so this is just a run through a business case study, a successful one of a company operating in Guyana. First of all, we'll run through the local content development strategy, what I would recommend an international company to endorse and embrace within their business plan. And then who else better than to tell the story than some of the Guyanese team themselves. So I will be supported by various members of the Guyanese team here, going through a walk through the journey of OES Guyana to date, and then finishing off on what the future holds for OES Guyana. So normally we'll do a safety moment, but I thought this was more reasonable for a value moment. Now, this is kind of what we're going to touch on and what can be achieved in Guyana. So this is a technician working for OES Guyana, who is a level 1 multi-skilled technician. And the value moment here is typically a business coming into a market like Guyana will normally look for the new and upcoming generation of workforce. Now, I would recommend don't do this. Open it up for everyone in Guyana so everyone can have equity. And a key example of this was a guy called Kester. Kester, a very intelligent guy. He's worked around the world, very committed, determined, and hardworking. Now, he was never really given that much of an opportunity in Guyana before the oil and gas industry came here. We took him on, and he excelled in all of his courses, all of his training. He has traveled around to the world, to Brazil, doing various training, and he is soon to go offshore in Trinidad on a non-destructive testing job out there. This showed to me that there was a lot of people in Guyana before the oil and gas industry who were very, very suited for the oil and gas industry, but there were just never the opportunities there before it arrived. So I will recommend any international companies to come in to please open that pool field to include everyone and all the Guyanese to give them an equal opportunity in the industry. Okay, in terms of local content development strategy, now there is the local content development policy. It isn't legislated yet, but what I would recommend is do take this policy very seriously and bind it into your business development, so your business plan, because the signs that I'm seeing is that it will be legislated soon or in due time. It is geared towards local ownership, which is rightly so, and joint ventures. Now, what I would say is don't be scared by this, and don't rush into it. It's very important that any joint venture that you do in Guyana is set for the right reasons. It can become anti-local content development if that relationship breaks down too soon. So take your time with it. Make sure you select the right partner and don't rush into it. In terms of recruitment, one policy that OES Guyana has is your attitude over your aptitude determines your altitude. There is a lot of transferable skill sets that the Guyanese have. It may not be exactly what you're used to in other regions, but from the experience that the OES Guyana team have had, these skill sets are very suited to what is required in the oil and gas industry. Give them the right training and the right experience, and they will succeed and excel in those roles. Local supply chain, it's very easy. Let's look at buying Guyanese. Let's work with your Guyanese local supply chain, work with them, support them, and give them the best chance of success. Training, technology, and knowledge transfer. Use the best in global recognized training providers. And as an international company, what I would say is, if you've got an international presence, send your Guyanese workforce around the globe, working around your global operations to get the right experience and the right training on a global level. That for me it will see the best return in terms of excelling in their career. Culture, there is a fantastic culture in Guyana, and there's certainly a link between Aberdeen, the UK, and Guyana, a very strong link there. Very, very friendly, welcoming people, and have a lot of culture that you can embrace into your business over here. And lastly, and most importantly, is corporate social responsibility. give something back to the community. Now, I don't mean in terms of checks or financial donations, but engage with charities, good needs, and engage with the local establishments over here to give something back to the Guyanese people, and for all the right reasons. So I will hand this over now to Annalisa. So I'm going to quickly mute mine, and Annalisa, if you unmute your mic, please.
Yes, Adam, thank you. Hello, everyone. So I would just like to expand on what Adam spoke about, equity and diversity. So OES Guyana thrives and takes pride in inclusion, equity, and diversity of our human resource. We believe that there is beauty in diversity. We believe that through our differences, joined together by a common idea or goal or mission, we're more creative, we're stronger, we're wholesome and efficient. We aim to reduce disparities in opportunities, experiences, and outcomes in every aspect of our business. In the recruitment process at OES Guyana, we search diverse groups and pools of talent. We believe everyone can start from the same place, irrespective of their background. Shortlisting is done in a fair, transparent, and unbiased manner, as we are determined to give all Guyanese the opportunity to work in the promising and exciting oil and gas industry. Guyana is blessed to have so many different people and cultures. This makes the recruitment process much better for a diversified team. We make the best use of existing transferable skill sets, as Adam mentioned, as we believe abilities, experience, and collaboration are assets to any organization, especially ours. We aim to increase this by developing the culture of career progression for each of our employees. We provide guidance, assistance, and support on career plans for each of our employees. We are determined to create the business, the environment to which people are welcomed, accepted, and connected to one another. We are all interrelated and interdependent as the human race, so we must ensure we perform collectively and everyone feels that sense of inclusion. At OES Guyana, we don't identify ourselves by a hierarchical structure. We work as a team. At OES Guyana, we support and learn from each other. When we succeed, we win together. If we fail, we learn together. Thank you. Adam, back to you.
Thank you very much, Annalisa, for that. Okay, local supply chain. Now, the local supply chain here has grown substantially over the last few years. They have made a lot of headway. However, the oil and gas industry is still new here, and there's still a way to go. So any international company come in, we need to be pro-purchasing local. Now, we also need to be engaging with the local supply chain, helping them, giving them the best chance to succeed, having a kind of a one team, one goal culture. So, OES Guyana do this in various ways. We engage with the local suppliers, they engage with the clients. They often have in-house training days, in-house kind of get-togethers with both clients and suppliers to let them know what's required to support the business in Guyana, what they need, and how collectively that can be achieved. So what I will advise and encourage any international business coming in here to have that similar type of approach. Set KPIs on purchasing locally, set KPIs on engaging and working with your local suppliers to get the best success and to give them the most chance of success in being involved and supporting what a great industry this will be for Guyana. At the moment, OES Guyana have 76% of their purchases are purchased locally, which I think is great for quite a young business in this market. Training, technology, and knowledge transfer. Again, this is key. And what I will say is, Guyana is not a training ground for expats. You need to bring your best within your business to Guyana. If the Guyana and the Guyana's people are to succeed, they need to learn from the best. They need the best in training and the best in technology to achieve that. This is something that OES Guyana take very, very seriously. So just to give Robert Clark his 5 seconds of fame here. Robert Clark is a twice award-winning Lear engineer who supervises and teaches the local Guyanese workforce over in Guyana. This is the level of commitment that OES Guyana have, and this is how seriously we take it. They bring the best of the global engineers to Guyana to train the local workforce. Now, not only that, what OES Guyana also does is they will send their Guyanese technicians around the world to work globally, get the right experience, the right training, the right mentoring, and then bring them back to Guyana to further develop their career. So again, I would encourage any international business to implement a similar approach. You could have Guyanese people working for your business over in Aberdeen and the North Sea to get some really good experience from very well established engineers and workers within the industry, and then bring them back to Guyana, give them that exposure, give them that life experience, because one of the beautiful things is in the oil and gas industry is travel. It's one of the things I thoroughly enjoy, and many people in the oil and gas industry do. I think giving the Guyanese people access to that is crucial for the development. I'm now going to pass on to Sebastian, who leads our operations team, and some of our technicians to share some of their story in terms of their career progression with OES Guyana. Sebastian, it's over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all for your time and the opportunity to give this speech. My name is Sebastian de Freitas. I have been fortunate to be the first Guyanese to be employed with OES, and I have been able to see my growth over the last 2 years, where I've moved from scrubbing shackles onshore to being offshore doing inspections, to being part of major projects on drill ships, to currently where I am as the operations and logistics lead in OES Guyana. During my time with OES, I've seen my workmates begin and enter into the oil and gas industry, where they were given similar opportunities and have come through the same path, even though we've all come from different walks of life. For OES, I can easily say that it is indeed a company that has the best interests at heart when it comes to career development. Currently, we have 8 technicians, inspectors, with the onboarding of 5 more very soon, as we're currently expanding and always improving. Within the company, we give our teammates the chance to have a growth in the direction in which they please with regards to inspections. The opportunities are out there, and our team is excited to make the best of it. So as you can see, behind me, we have Shamir Ahmad. Shamir is here, sorry. We have Raj down here. We have Testa, which is at the back here. You saw him in the slide earlier. And then this is Sean we have here. Now these are just part of the team that we have currently in the office. The other guys are currently out on different ships in different areas of the world. Now, Shamir and Raj have completed their Leo Foundation course with the help of Robert Clark, who you had seen earlier on the slide. They've passed with flying colors and have already been booked into the 2nd level of their training, which are runway beams and offshore containers inspections. So they're also scheduled to travel in 2 weeks to get their BOSIAT, CAEDS, and ERATA training courses done, as they will be carrying out inspections on drill ships in different parts of the world with our experienced teams, after which they will be coming back to help train the other fellows that we have coming in. Now, Kesta has his offshore tickets already. He's been extremely fast in his learning process, and he's going to be doing his ERATA training course in a couple of weeks. Well, Sean is the youngest, which you would like to speak about a little bit and give you an idea of how he has been able to grow here in Guyana.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sean Rodriguez. I would just like to talk about my experience working with OES. I've learned has opened my eyes to a whole new world within OES. This company team has been very helpful with my growth and development. Although I'm still in the green, I have acquired so much knowledge, and I'm looking forward to learn so much more.
A little bit nervous, Sean. So that's just to give you an idea of what's happening on the ground with our inspectors and the fellows that we have working here. Thank you very much. Adam, back to you.
Thank you, Sebastian and the team. As one thing I will iterate is the success of Guyana is not what is achieved just in Guyana, but it's what Guyana does on the global stage. And I think that's at the core of the OES Guyana business model. So I'm now going to hand over to Tremaine, who's going to look at the embracing the Guyanese culture and all the fun that's involved with that.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. So I'm Tremaine, Business Development Manager for OES Guyana. And at OES Guyana, there is a family feel culture, which leads to better dynamics when it comes to getting things done together. I've found that it has helped me to work more effectively and establish a sense of loyalty, which I believe is a key factor for success. We have an open door policy that has given my ideas general weight. 4 months ago, when I joined the team, there were terms completely unfamiliar to me, but I never once felt like I was alone. I felt comfortable approaching my colleagues. If they were occupied with something else, they would get back to me as soon as they were free. With this, I became more confident and motivated, which ideally led to me being more efficient. I am now preparing to complete my first course for the Lifting Equipment Engineers Association, or LEA. My confidence in negotiating this course comes from the support system I have witnessed in place between those who were preparing to write LEA and those who have already advanced to higher levels. Our upcoming projects include book drives and mini library projects to give back to the community. These activities were decided on and planned as a team, as it is our team dynamic that energizes us to pursue common goals. I have found that the family feel culture that OES Guyana has naturally embraced has resulted in more satisfied staff, improved productivity and retention levels, and better workplace camaraderie and dynamics. There's genuine interest reaching beyond the office as personal milestones too are celebrated. As with all families, there have been times when others have experienced some challenges, but as a team, we have reached out and offered support, be it issues with their families or the hometowns being affected by the recent floods that we've had, family members affected by COVID-19, or any general issue that required their attention away from the work environment. We have continued to remain socially distant, but being emotionally distant will not happen with the OES team.
Okay, thank you very much, Donna. Much appreciated for that. And on to the last slide. Okay, what is left in stock for OES Guyana and what does the future hold? So most importantly, local content will increase substantially into the 90% range, and local purchasing will also increase as we again educate, engage, and work with the local supply chain. That will increase into the high 80s. Training, again, as the business grows, OES Guyana is committed to investing and obviously reinvesting, to reinvest in the local workforce, take on new apprentices coming through the system, and expand on the service range that they provide. They have a very much promote within culture. You know, everyone in OES Guyana starts at a certain position, and they've seen their career and their progression progress substantially over time. The main thing that OES Guyana wants to achieve here is putting Guyana on the global stage. So the next stage for OES Guyana is Suriname. So a success story, and this is what I really call local content development, a full flow through of local content development. So those Guyanese that were trained by expats from Aberdeen or from the UK are now certified enough and competent. They will now start to train the employees employed in Suriname. So they become the expat, and I think that's a great story, and that's a great structure to have in any business. You need to look at your Guyanese force and how they become the expat. And so very soon, OES Guyana will be operating in Suriname, and the Guyanese will be training the Surinamese and how to do inspections, rope access, and other skill sets. That's all from OES Guyana. Thank you all for listening, and I will now stop the screen share.
Well, Adam, thank you very much. A fabulous presentation, and I think it was really good having the input from the local team in Guyana. The fact you're presenting from Guyana, having completed a very extensive exploration of the market, launch, and growing the business, and great presentation from you and the team. A lot of work gone into that, and hopefully everybody on the call today, I think, can take pieces of useful information from that, whether it be the local content strategy you've adopted, or the joint venture, just any. There's so much good content there. If anybody does have questions for Adam, which I'm sure some will have, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we will make sure we cover them at the end. And Adam, thank you again for your support, and really appreciate you sharing the story. So, as I said earlier, stories, I think, like Adam's and OES's, bring home to people, I think, what the points are they should be considering. So we now have a second case study, and I'm delighted to have John Lowe, who is UK Director of TLC, Transportation and Logistic Consulting. And they are based here in Aberdeen, Aberdeenshire, but have incorporated and set up a business in Guyana, taking that right up to a local country manager. Their head office is Switzerland, but John is speaking to us from the Aberdeen / sort of UK end today. So John, the floor is yours to share the TLC story.
Okay, thank you, Brett. Good afternoon, Lord Provost, fellow speakers and delegates. This is the third time that TLC have had the honour of presenting to the Aberdeen Guyana Gateway, and it's great to see that the delegate numbers have risen considerably since the inaugural event in 2018. Next slide, please, Stacey. As you can see on the caption, I'm the TLC UK Director based in the Aberdeen office, and I manage the commercial activities with existing and prospective clients based in the UK, Northern Europe, and the UAE regions. Our colleagues in our commercial office in Houston, they take on their responsibility for clients based in the Americas. Also on the slide, you can photograph of my colleague at head office, Adeline Wenger, our group sales and marketing manager. Adeline was to join us on the presentation today, but unfortunately was busy with other items to take over. Adeline's responsible for our overall marketing strategy, management of all sales inquiries, quotations, and tenders, as well as our corporate image and promotions. Next slide, please. This year, TLC are celebrating our 20th year in business, having grown steadily since 2001. Our first overseas operation was established in Equatorial Guinea in 2003, followed in Africa by Angola, Gabon, Congo, Mozambique, Ivory Coast, and Senegal. And in 2018, we set up in Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago. It's actually strange, from our experience and knowledge had all come from operating in West Africa, but we had been approached by some of our existing clients there who had said, you know, have you ever considered looking at Guyana? And so obviously this was something from a business point of view we couldn't turn down, and so we moved on accordingly. As a group, from November 2020, we formed a strategic alliance with Pentagon Freight Services to offer a wider market coverage thanks to complementary locations, as you can see from the graphic. It appears the red dots for TLC fit in nicely with the black dots, the presence for Pentagon Freight Services. So we can now offer a seamless end-to-end service to and from any global location and supported by an integrated IT system. Next slide, please. Back in 2016 was the start of the TLC Guyana project. Following extensive market research, we started the process to set up a subsidiary in Georgetown and also looked at one in Port of Spain. This included various scouting missions, talking to the authorities, banks, legal representatives, and of course, prospective partners. This venture has been fully managed from our head office in Switzerland, leveraging on the experience of setting up operations in developing oil and gas countries in West Africa. And also we had considerable support from our colleagues based in Houston. The regional presence, as you can see, we are looking obviously at Suriname, but we are not quite there yet. But progress is being made at a reasonable rate at the moment. Next slide, please. Key personnel. We have appointed a new country manager just since the beginning of May, Mr. Luigi Rota. Luigi has held various management positions in South and North America and has accumulated more than 15 years experience in both international freight forwarding and energy industries. Luigi is very familiar with Guyana, as he has recently conducted several logistics studies in country with for a various number of clients. So he is aware of the area and a lot of the important people within the country. Emilio Antulit, who assured me that for his passport photograph he wasn't allowed to smile. I think he's it's not the best photograph of him, but I'll just have to accept what he's given us. Emiliano has been with TLC for more than 8 years and is currently ensuring a smooth transition between our country managers. Emiliano, he will soon relocate to Port of Spain as Trinidad Tobago country manager, where he will also assume overall regional responsibility. The team is also supported from Houston by Jerry Diaz, who has more than 20 years experience in freight forwarding and was until recently global key account manager for a major driller within the Pentagon Houston office. Jerry principally supports sales activities in the Caribbean and South America, but not forgetting our African interests. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, TLC Guyana, it is a joint venture with the local company John Fernand's, who hold the majority share. John Fernand's Limited have more than 60 years history in shipping services, both within and to and from Guyana. We can therefore provide the full range of logistics services at quayside and inland locations. We have recently moved into a new location in Georgetown, which will allow us more office space and flexibility. The basis behind the joint venture was to lever on John Fernand's local knowledge with the shipping and the facilities, And then, of course, TLC were to bring the previous experience dealing in the oil and gas business to the market in Guyana. And certainly so far, it has been a very good venture, and we continue to expand at a reasonable pace. Next slide, please. As we heard from the previous presentation, one of the main commitments is to support the local Guyanese economy. Other than our country manager, our Georgetown team are all local Guyanese, and all our main subcontractors are Guyanese owned. We will continue to employ and train local Guyanese as our presence and operations grow in country. Next slide, please. Sorry, just as an overview of some of our business so far. Back in 2019, TLC Guyana were awarded the importation of the Liza Destiny FPSO into Guyana. The import formalities also included the inward and outward clearances of the various support vessels, as well as arranging, on arrival, a certification of the FPSO's helideck by the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority. I can also advise that in a vote of confidence for the services provided by TLC, we have now been awarded the contract for the importation of the second FPSO, the Liza Unity, which is due to arrive in Guyana at the end of August. This award will cover the same range of services as shown on the screen. Next slide, please. Okay. In addition to our offshore services, we also manage the inward and outward clearance of the VLCC Sea Garnet, which cleared the exportation of 1 million barrels of crude oil with destination India. It's a type of business we would handle within our other countries in West Africa, but through our contacts, we were able to gain the business, and certainly a good job done by the TLC Guyana team. Next slide, please. Other customers we are currently working with in the Guyanese market, Champion X. We have managed their license application for the importation of specific chemical products for the offshore industry. Close contact was made with the PTCCB, which is the Pesticides and Toxic Chemicals Control Board, a division of the Ministry of Agriculture. A process was also put in place for the monitoring of the empty chemical totes and the subsequent cleaning and reuse. Won't go through the whole list, but with Fugro, we had a service agreement to provide ships agency and visa formalities for seismic and support vessels operating in Guyanese waters. Pick another one, Solstad. We acted as agents for the vessel, the Normand Installer, as it had recently been supporting the FPSO. Thank you. Next slide. Sorry if I'm racing through these, but we can certainly follow up later if anybody has any additional questions. Just as we said, added value. We're providing logistic solutions, utilizing 60 years of local knowledge and history, married with 20 years of experience in developing oil and gas countries. We can offer full global support with commercial offices in Aberdeen and in Houston, targeting any of the decision makers who we need to keep in touch with on a regular basis. Our office in Port of Spain also to support the services there, as we are all aware that the Port of Georgetown itself has difficulty at the moment accommodating some of the larger vessels. So some of the marine activities have to be managed from Port of Spain and the location there. We have our strengths there. We have a successful track record with a number of clients all through the oil and gas chain. We are fully anti-bribery and corruption compliant and have been for more than 10 years. We can provide in-house assets, a shore base, yards, transport. Our in-house IT systems can support customer requirements. We can customize any reports to suit our clients' KPIs. Compliant customs procedures, and we have local decision makers. And all as I say, we're more than happy to assist at any stage of inquiries regarding business within Guyana. We can offer transparency. We are committed to creating local employment and supporting the local economy. We can provide training programs with technical resources, and we maintain a commitment to quality. Next slide, I think just the final one. And any questions, as I say, either at the end of the presentations today or out with this, please do not hesitate to contact either myself or Luigi in Georgetown, and we will assist as best we can. Thank you.
A huge thank you, John and Adam, for being our two case studies today. And I'm sure everybody on the session today will agree that having had two businesses share their journey, to explore and grow and set up in Guyana, and how they've worked with local content and the local supply chains, very useful information for anyone considering the Guyana market. So thus far, we've heard from the City of Aberdeen. We've heard from Bobby Gosai from the Ministry of Natural Resources, and also the Petroleum Economist's view. We've had our two case studies. Now, Stacey, our final part is obviously.
Sorry, Brett, I've mixed up the slides. Alistair's not.
Yeah, I know. I'll talk around it. So what we're going to do is our final part of today is we've got Francis Kiernan from Ibis Energy, who is the very man that introduced Guyana to me. And without Francis, there would be no Guyana Gateway, and there certainly wouldn't be me doing what I'm doing today. And what we're going to do is Francis is going to give some thoughts on the Guyana market. And we're going to be joined just after that with our final participant today. Last but by no means least, we're delighted to have Alistair Rutledge, the president of ExxonMobil in Guyana, Scott in Guyana, who has just joined the call. So if you have any questions, pop them in the chat and we will circle back to them for the Q&A part. Francis, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Brett. There we are. Well, this is possibly a slight change in pace from what we've seen earlier. Guyana is a great story, and we've been involved for probably, 3 years, possibly more. However, in the rest of the oil and gas business, in the rest of the oil and gas global business, net zero and energy transition, and of course, COVID are very much in play in the marketplace. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that in the context of the great story that is Guyana, and perhaps to talk about a little caution. So, Stacey, if you could go to the next slide. And that's just a disclaimer, go to the next one. Shaking up big oil. That's been quite common in the trade papers, in all of the platforms for media. the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times for sure. The demand conundrum, and I want to talk a little bit about that, because on the one hand, you have a court case, for instance, that involves Shell in Holland, and on the other, you had Engine One joining the Exxon board. So if you go to the next slide, please, Stacey. To some degree, the recent events mark a watershed, I think, for big Western oil. I've been in the industry for more than 30 years, and despite the fact that we are somewhat unstable in terms of the market, depending on demand, the industry has always been the first point of entry for big capital investment. And we're probably running into, in my experience, for the first time, queries with regard to whether big oil can continue with the level of investment that we normally expect from, particularly from Wall Street and from the other major stock exchanges. It's worth noting that big Western oil firms control 15% of the global supply. If you were to read the media in the West, you would imagine that we control the entire supply. Circumstances are also influencing the major institutional investors. So if you look at, I've named 4 there. But if you've got the principals in, for instance, BlackRock, Larry Fink's claiming that major capital investment is attracted to clean investment. And so the whole question of continued, not unregulated, but continued enthusiastic investment in black oil as we know it is possibly under threat. I've said already that big oil firms, the Western oil firms, control 15% of global supply. Big oil firms are also impacted on access to capital, liquidity, and they're probably looking to divest some of their specific assets. North Sea is a very good example. So for instance, the North Sea 5 years ago had 0 private equity. It now has 10% private equity. So what we're seeing is major divestments. If there's a lack of investment by and large, or there's a reduction in investment, a consequence of both the divestment and the lack of investment may well see big oil producing less oil. It may well also see that the major investors into the Western oil and gas business will be critical with regard to where the investment is made. The principal players in Guyana are all big Western oil. The principal players in Suriname are all big Western oil. So we need to stop and consider before we move on to to the great excitement, of course, that is the development of a major oil property. Stacey. So the pandemic has had a major effect. For a start, it stopped me getting to Guyana, or for that matter, to Suriname. But as we come out of the pandemic, the economies will grow. As it grows, oil demand will increase. Broadly speaking, there's expected to be a 6% growth, 6.4 in the States. But broadly speaking, we're expecting all the economies to grow. Stacey. As a result of that growth, sorry, my screen is partly blocked. Here we go. So as you look at relaxation of the lockdown measures in the latter part of 20, wider availability of vaccines, and generally speaking, as we come out of the lockdown period, and this applies globally, you're going to see an increase in demand. At an operational level, you're still going to see asset write-downs and divestments. As I said, I'll give you an example of the North Sea. And this is likely to continue. In addition to that, I've already talked about the concern with regard to the major investment houses. So if you combine all of these things, the pressure on the Western oil companies makes it, I wouldn't say difficult, but it really concentrates the mind with regard to the areas that you are going to invest in. And from that point of view, you would look at, for instance, Guyana and Suriname. I mean, Guyana, Liza 1 was 5 years from discovery to production. And in relative terms, Bobby Gosai has already mentioned that at $35, the return on capital invested still makes it attractive. So what you're seeing is market pressures, particularly with regard to big capital and the direction that that's driving the industry, and also the impact that the environmental considerations have with regard to our industry are all driving us into a place where I believe that in the 3 to 5 years, probably the longer period, we're going to have to be rather more focused. And the relationship between, for argument's sake, the sovereign states and the big Western oil coast, it probably will need to have a restart, a rethink about how this is going on. So, Stacey. For those of you who have been in the industry, as I think most of us have, structural and cyclical changes. You know, we've every so often we have boom and bust. It's the way the industry works. And what this is intended to demonstrate is that boom and bust, whether we be in net zero or transition, or whether we're invested in greater or lesser extent, the fact is that the whole process of net zero will either be flat line as you can see it, or if we accelerate this, whether that be through governments or whether that be commitments of companies like Total Energy, Exxon, BP, Shell, we're still going to be in a period where there is fragility with regard to oil price, oil demand, and we need to consider this as we move forward. Stacey. Right. This is an interesting piece. It's a fairly standard presentation piece. It's and what it says here is on the left side we've got high exposure, low exposure, and then across the bottom we've got high resilience and low resilience. It shouldn't be a surprise to you who are in business and who understand capital investment that if you look at the high resilience and low exposure, and remember what I've said about investment and demand and the use of the product, in there are the usual suspects. So you've got the US, Germany, UK, France, Poland, the developed economies. If you look up to the right, high exposure and low resilience, there you'll find Guyana. And we've also identified Ghana, which is another country that we do business with. But Suriname would probably be in there as well. It's worth remembering that both Guyana and Suriname are sub 4 billion US economies with very little technical facility or infrastructure. So it's important when you look at these things is with regard to how you relate to the oil co. Because if the oil co is going to comply with the requirements of their commitments to net zero, there needs to be a balance between the production of black oil and the creation of and the enhancement of infrastructure that is sympathetic to the commitments that people have made with regard to net zero and or the transition process. So this is really quite important that countries like Guyana in particular focus on this. The other area of interest is the high exposure, high resilience. You know, if you look at Qatar, it sits on a bed of gas. If you look at Brunei, Saudi Arabia, these would be countries that, for argument's sake, if the Western oil companies, through whatever it may be, whether that be lack of investment or for more focused investment, if they start to reduce the production that they have, then the production is likely to shift to national oil cos and to OPEC Plus as its partners. So it's really quite important here that when we look at the world that we're heading into, it's not about pumping more. It's more about balancing the relationship between black oil and the targets that are set by these major companies and their ability to attract investment and big capital. Next slide, please. So, old geezers like me, I don't quite go back to 1785, but generally speaking, I've been through a number of these dancing with death, as it were. So if you look at the innovation that goes through our industry, digital network, that was a major change. The ability to be able to run life cycles where you can introduce mutations, and therefore you can predict more reasonably what's going to happen with a particular product or a reservoir, or whatever, has been a great step forward. However, that was all, up to the fifth wave, was all at a time when we were the principal destination for big capital globally. And we are being challenged. That is no longer the case. Renewable energy, sustainability, lithium batteries, all the things you can see there, I don't need to go through them. Some would, for instance, make the observation that net zero and the introduction of lithium batteries and or the proliferation of electric cars, of course, will have perhaps an equally but currently unmeasured impact on where we go with big investment and where we go with regard to the best thing for the global community. On you go. So, coming back to where we're talking about, I'm sure you all do. I certainly read all of the current information platforms in the region, and they're all, generally speaking, enormously optimistic. And they seem not to take account of any of the things that I've said. In fact, there seems to be a presumption that they were going to head into this, all guns blazing, and we'll wave the checkered flag and let you know when we've arrived. So I think that if you're talking, Guyana is talking about accelerating production to access short-term demand, because there will also, I would say to you, there will be people in our industry that are looking at the next 2 years and the expected increase in demand and rubbing their hands. They'll be seeing, they know oil prices are going to increase, they know demand is going to substantially increase, and they will be short-termists. If you're a government in Guyana trying to improve the lot of your people, then you need to be thinking longer term. So let's just think about the idea of talking about accelerating production, the government or whoever it is, in terms of the social media. We think this would be difficult. What people need to remember is you have a single production facility, Liza 1. You've got a single player, Exxon. Now, Liza 2, Payara, Yellowtail, they're all plugged in, but there is a development cycle. This doesn't happen by magic. You can't just say, oh, well, we're suddenly going to have all three produce at the same time. That doesn't work that way. Producing such major production capacity, such as the FPSOs we're talking about, is a serious undertaking. Production assets, capacity are limiting factors. Anybody who reads the background to these production facilities will know that, broadly speaking, the production process, the processes are largely the same, largely because you're on a similar reservoir, you're on Stabroek. These are limiting factors. The reservoir recovery, stabilization of the reservoir, the asset management and continued production development stability, these are issues that, it's not like, for instance, you get iron ore in one end and you produce a car at the other. When you're in the oil and gas business, the issues are not certainty. You're dealing with Mother Earth. You don't drill into a hole in the ground, there's a pool of oil. All of this has to be managed. And then finally, it's not finally, but the other point I've made at the start is demand. Demand is certainly going to be a significant factor with regard to what the globe needs, but with regard to Western oil co's, that's a conundrum. How do you deal with that? How do you prove that you are producing oil and you are producing it in a manner which meets the requirements of the Sustainable Development Goals that are being set down by the UN? And then finally on this slide, securing continued investment. And that doesn't apply. Bobby, for instance, was talking earlier when he talked not just about oil and gas, he talked about energy. He talked about creating an energy grid. He talked about gas to power. Gas to power is a major project. It's $1.5 billion. These facilities, the processes, are not designed to export gas. They're designed to produce oil. So securing investment, continued investment for all parties, but particularly for sovereign governments, means that they need to take significant account of the host international developer for deep water. Because there needs to be compensation. You produce oil, you've got to have infrastructure that's environmentally friendly, and you've got to help everybody has got to contribute to meeting net zero. That is just a matter of fact. Next one, please.
Okay, just about a minute left, Francis.
I'm finished now. Right. So what I'm saying is that countries are facing decisions here. And I had to ask my learned colleague Theo what exogenous meant, and also the other side I had to ask him what that meant as well. So what it means is external origin. You know, if pathway from fossil-based fuels to zero carbon, essentially you're speaking on the left side about the Western economies and Western governments. You know, you might argue that, for instance, net zero and transition is an upper end middle class conversation being held by the developed world, who produces only 15% of the product. But from that side of things, concerns are access to external finance. The UN, the Sustainable Development Goals are going to become increasingly important. We will, of course, achieve technological advances in the energy supply, and there will be. We have to take account of changing investor priorities. Now, I talked about the attitudes that host governments may have in the context of the relationship between international oil companies, and here we come to the nub of the matter. What you really need to be looking at is sustained growth. While it's wonderful to get the present of $70, $80 barrels of oil and grow your crash income, the reality is, if you really want to participate and you want to be effective as a country, there's got to be sustained growth, which is energy access, equity, and energy revenues. And for that, it means you're looking at a country like Guyana, which has significant fossil fuel resources and renewable potential. It has revenue and employment challenges. It has energy access and energy security. So I leave you with this thought. Oil and gas has been taking a hell of a kicking. Maybe some of it is merited. We have to play what's in front of us. Exxon has made a commitment, and Total and Total Energies and the other partners will make significant commitments also. We talked about Suriname. But there has to be recognition that everybody is a partner. Black oil needs to be compensated for by the development of sustainable economies and recognition that just being the host nation is not enough. You've got to be a sustainable partner if you want to continue to be effective and you want to continue to deliver results for your population and your community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francis, for sharing your insights on the journey and your thoughts and the time in the industry and how they relate to where we are today and moving forward. Really appreciate that. So our final guest today, but by no means least, I'm delighted that we're joined on the call by a Scot in Guyana, and Alistair, I think Alistair Rutledge here is online. Alistair Rutledge is the president of ExxonMobil in Guyana. So it's very much his show down there, and he took charge of that position last summer and has been steering the Exxon journey there. Alistair, can you hear me?
I can, Brett. Can you hear me?
Alistair, yes, I can. Alistair, greetings from Aberdeen to Guyana. And I wonder if I could just ask you to share a few thoughts on being a Scot in Guyana and this very interesting time where the industry finds itself and this new energy frontier that I know every time we raise the Guyana flag, we get more attendees than any other place on the planet. So maybe Alistair could ask you to share some thoughts.
Sure, I'll give you a little bit of an update on what's happening here, and I think Francis already framed some of it, but let me do that, and then happy to take questions for a little bit.
Thank you, Alistair.
As you say, Brett, I arrived here in July last year in the middle of what had been an extended election process for the country. But soon after I arrived, a new government came into place, and they're should be on a 5-year term, although, as everyone knows in politics, nothing is for sure, and things are always subject to change. Soon after I arrived, we were able to secure the approval of the Payara project, which is the third major development in Guyana. But perhaps good to step back from all of that and just put it in perspective. I think of where Guyana is today a little bit like the North Sea in the 70s and early 80s. I mean, just discovering very early stages of discovery and development. As some have mentioned, limited industrial activity in the country, which was predominantly in the mining sector and the sugar activities. And so we found as a major operation coming into Guyana, it's taken a bit of time to establish some of those foundations that many are familiar with around the Aberdeen area, such as shore-based facilities and the logistics that go around that to support our operations. Much of that sort of lowest level foundation is largely established, but we still take some of our support from Trinidad, given that it's the most established operation in the area. But gradually through the course of this year, I think virtually all of that, the remaining parts which have to do with waste management, some of the drilling fluids, some of the heavier lift capability, pulling together the subsea jumpers for the flow lines are going to be fabricated or assembled here in Guyana very shortly for the Liza Phase 2 installation activity this year. So just think of since 2015, when the first exploration success took place after many, many years of searching around this basin. And then late 2019, the first production started from the Liza Phase 1 Destiny FPSO. It's about 120,000 barrel a day FPSO. Our second development, Liza Phase 2, which is a 220,000 barrel a day FPSO, is due to sail from Singapore to Guyana in about a month or so. We're at the final stages of preparing that FPSO. SBM Offshore is the main contractor there. So I expect around September, October, we'll have the second FPSO in location, and we'll start up the final hookup, commissioning, and be on target to deliver the first production in the first quarter next year, which, given the last 18 months of COVID interruptions, is actually quite remarkable to still have that project on schedule. We, over the last 3 to 4 months, increased our number of rigs operating from four to 6. So we have a very active ongoing exploration as well as development program. So we're now we've almost completed development wells for Liza Phase 1. We're very much focused on delivering 16 development wells for Liza Phase 2 by the time of startup. And we have actually started some of the open water works on Payara wells. So plenty of activity on the drilling front. That's what drives most of our logistics activity, as you can imagine. We have 23 PSVs in operation and 3 MPVs. Bristow's is our main helicopter operator here in country, helping to support the movement of personnel. We, in a country that really didn't have any kind of industry, are still making great progress on growing the national workforce. I think there's some 2,600 Guyanese now involved across the industry. from that drilling activity to production facilities, but also onshore and a lot of the support infrastructure. As we look forward in time, some of you may have heard we are currently pushing forward with the 4th development project. We've launched the environmental impact assessment work for a Yellowtail project, which is likely to be a similar sort of scale to Liza Phase 2 and Payara, around about a 220 to 250,000 barrel a day development. We plan to submit the field development plan to the government around October of this year, with the aim to get to a final investment decision probably in about the second quarter of next year. That would be project number 4. Number 5 is coming up close behind that, and indeed 6 and 7 we have line of sight to. So we remain on course to deliver 6 or 7 projects in the 2027 timeframe. So really, by the time you get to 5 or 6 projects, the capacity will have reached somewhere around 1 million barrels per day of production, which will catapult Guyana to quite a significant level from both at production and, as you look around the world today on oil production basis, but even historically among the countries in the world that have ever reached 1 million barrels per day of oil production. Another area that we're developing, again, I think Francis mentioned this, gas to energy. The country is very reliant on importing of liquid fuel, fuel oil or diesel. And so we are working with the government to bring onshore gas from the Liza field. We're looking at a 2024 startup for that project. And are just, again, like the Yellowtail project, starting the environmental impact assessment activity for the project. It'll be about a 250 megawatt power development onshore. The pipeline that we're talking about with the government would be a 12-inch pipeline, which would have the capacity up to about 120 to 130 million cubic feet a day. Only about 50 million is required for the power plant at 250 megawatts. So the remainder is for future expansion, either of power or for some smaller scale industry. And so the government is focused on the Wales development area, which is a former sugar plantation area on the west bank of the Demerara River, where the gas to shore and power plant will be an anchor development, but there are plans to do much more in that space, both from a commercial and industrial perspective. We continue to see 6-rig activity for at least another year or two, and then depending upon the success with the exploration, we'll see, and the project pace, we'll continue to evaluate that drilling activity. But there is certainly going to be a baseload of drilling activity that I would expect would keep us at 4 rigs or more for a good number of years yet in Guyana. Hopefully that gives you some sense of what the business has been through, where we're at, the path that we're on. So maybe a little more on the migration of project activity. Clearly, Guyana isn't going to be constructing FPSOs, but we are working to continue to bring as much fabrication or assembly work for the project installations to the country. We recently released a tender for a project shore base that would facilitate more of that type of assembly work in country prior to it being the equipment taken to the subsea installation locations. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Alistair, for giving us such a valuable update on a very exciting frontier in the world. And I really appreciate you taking the time out your very busy schedule to come and join this Scottish Guyana bridge today to give everybody the latest. Thank you very much, Alistair. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So if anyone's got any questions for any of our speakers today, please pop them in the chat. And all of our speakers are still on the call, and we will do our very best to answer them. Stacey, do we have some questions?
We had one from Paul Goonan. I'm going to have to go and find it, unless, Paul, if you're still on the call.
Paul, are you still online?
If not, I will go and look for it. But okay, I found it anyway, so I'll read it out. So this is a question. I think Paul is still online. He's still blue. So Paul, if you want to clarify, but he's saying, are you looking to partner with international companies to increase your local offering in Guyana? He works for Arnley, and they already have business in the country with one of their key clients. So I think he's looking to connect with you, basically, is the question there.
And there's Paul. Paul, are you there?
I am indeed. How are you all?
Paul, I presume you're looking, and I'm seeing us sat in Houston right just now, discussing operators and opportunities for Scottish companies, and presumably, I know the amount of work you've put in as a Scot in Houston, building connections with operators. Are you asking that question in relation to the Guyana Basin?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're already quite active in Guyana with Exxon, but through SBM Offshore. And it was just to see if that's something that they're looking to maybe expand their horizons with people who are already doing business there, as well as themselves. So a little bit of synergy between obviously ourselves and OES.
Alistair, is that one you can help with at all in terms of as the second FPSO comes online and additional volume and activity?
Just to make sure I'm clear on the question, is it helping to find partners, or?
Yeah, it was more aimed, towards Adam at OES to see if they were looking to partner with international companies, given that they've got the local content there, if they're looking to bring more expertise in country.
Okay, sorry, apologies. Adam, can I hand that question to you, please?
Yes, of course, and certainly, yes. So, Paul, if you want, you can get my contact details, and I will connect you with the OES Guyana team. They are certainly looking for international expertise to come into country to support the operation, and very much push that local content development initiative.
Fantastic. Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, I'll connect you and Adam through an email after this, and so you can continue the conversation. Okay.
I appreciate that, Brett. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to just make one connection. If these two people can reach out to each other because you're asking. John Bloomfield, Patrick Ribeiro is asking. He wants to hear more of what you had to say, and he's put his email address in. So I just wanted to point that out so you can make sure and find it. And I think I'm just checking. We might have had a new question. Let me just get to the bottom. Yes. Okay. So I've got one from Yvette Filbert. Hi, Yvette or Eves. You can, if you want to come online and pronounce it. But she's asking Alistair, what's ExxonMobil's green credentials to support the seabed in Guyana?
Well, interesting. Let me tell you a little interest. So we do a lot of survey work as part of our developments, and obviously go through a rigorous environmental impact assessment process under all the World Bank standards. One of those surveys turned up a washing machine. So we've found even at 1,600 meters of water depth that people are liable to throw things over the side of boats, and we found shipwrecks, washing machines, all sorts of things. So we do our part of making sure we understand the environment, and that our developments are entirely sensitive to that. And we have ongoing monitoring and survey activity to ensure that we're not having any negative impact on the marine life or the fauna, although not much fauna at 1,600 meters plus water depth. So I would say we do get a lot of questions in this space about our impact on a country which has very green credentials. Many will know that they developed a red fund with Norway years ago, and have are a net carbon sink. So we're very sensitive to that. We're also sensitive to the Amerindian population. We want to make sure that our business is understood. There's a lot of education needed, but that also that much of the noise around the impacts that really aren't true are properly addressed, because there is a lot of misinformation that's flowing around. Hopefully that answers not just the specific, but the more general question.
Thank you. I think, Stacey, we've had another question just come in from.
Yeah, we have.
MTs.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So it's a question for Alistair, and the question is, are you able to comment at all on local content policy in Guyana, and what are some of the takeaways? Now, I know for those that maybe weren't on the call earlier, there was a lot of focus on local content, both from our two case studies today, from OES and from TLC. So I'm sure they would be willing also to share local content thoughts. But Alistair, do you have any local content thoughts on policies, etc.?
Sure. I mean, let me just first of all start with, we do see it as very important that we develop local content. For our business here to be sustainable, it can't be run with expats and solely overseas companies. So we do see that as a very important part of growing a footprint, growing a sustainable supply chain, just as Aberdeen did in the 70s and 80s to establish the industry in the North Sea. So we start from, if you like, a little bit of a lower foundation with very little industrial bench strength, but have made a lot of progress. The government is, of course, very eager to see that we continue that work. Launched a draft local content policy earlier this year. I would say that the biggest benefit to me of that was that it really increased the amount of engagement between the many parties that need to come to the table and talk about what are the barriers to continuing that progress, and in creating an environment that both supports local development but also supports the bringing in of expertise and capital to help grow the industry here. So that engagement, I've been pleased with. The Ministry of Natural Resources has been very constructive. I understand they do plan to move forward from the draft policy into legislation. Of course, a big part of the focus will be on, are there targets in there that are so difficult to achieve that it becomes restrictive on progress? I think all sides understand that we don't want to get ourselves into a position where we have unachievable targets. So that is the space, I would say, where most of the discussion on how we move this forward in a constructive way is taking place. But I would say all parties are eager to get to the point where we have a truly sustainable supply chain in country.
Thank you very much for that, Alistair. Adam, I have another question for you. And the question is from Yes Filbert, and she's asking, does OES offer any opportunities for, for second generation Guyanese in the Diaspora de Crosskill?
Yes, and this is actually a very valid question. The population of Guyana, just over 800,000. There's actually more Guyanese living outside of Guyana than in Guyana. So yes, second generation, and there's a huge potential of Guyanese. And this is what makes it really achievable here, is there was not much opportunity here before the oil and gas industry came. Now, a lot of that opportunity, the Guyanese had to go abroad. Now, there is so much opportunity now in Guyana, so we would be more than welcome to welcome all of Guyanese, wherever they are in the world, to come back to Guyana and be a part of their history, and this is their moment in time.
Okay, that's very good. Okay, thank you for that. That's great. Okay, I'm just looking through the chat.
We have just had another one come in.
I think we'd have time for maybe one more.
Yeah.
And I'm just conscious of time, Stacey, and everyone's time. I'm just looking at it. Yes, so that's just a reply come in from Yes Adam saying that she's actually just popped her email in the chat and she'd be happy to have a discussion with you. So I think we've just got, I think there's a final question for, is it Alistair again, Stacey? And the question is, I've been hearing a lot about remarks about mature local workforce in Guyana, about XOM not being taken. Yeah, I mean, Alistair, is that something you've got any thoughts on? It's the comments about the maturer local workforce.
We're open to recruiting the people that will help us drive this business forward.
It's about the skills, isn't it, and the right skills.
It is about the skills, absolutely. So now we're actively recruiting about 35 people, maybe more this year. We'll continue to grow to a population of probably around onshore, an office population of 400 to 450 people. And so we're looking for the full mix of skills. Obviously, it's hard to find people that have worked in anything like our industry, but it's not just technical skills we're looking for. We're looking for procurement skills. We're looking for accounting skills, across the board. And so we have one of the things I really enjoy about being in Guyana is there's such a wonderful diversity in the population. With many different backgrounds, and so we reflect that in our workforce. We have quite a diverse workforce already, and excited to continue growing that.
Thanks for that, Alistair. That's all incredibly positive and sounds fabulous. Thanks for that. I think we'll close the questions there. I'm just going to ask if any of our speakers, Adam, I know you've spoken. Would any of them, Francis, do you have any final points you'd like to make? John, do you have any final points you would like to make before we close? Just final reach out to the speakers today.
Nothing from my side. Just happy with everything that was going on. Very informative as always.
Thank you, John. Francis, anything from yourself?
No, nothing particularly. I thought that it was very good. I thought OES is doing a great job there. It's quite. I really was pleased that we were able to talk not in tandem with XOM, but to recognize, that the world of the oil and gas industry is not bounded by a narrow position either in Guyana or Suriname. It's a global industry, and the issues around investment, net zero, transition, it's a global game, and everybody needs to be a partner, not an adversary.
So without further ado, I'm conscious of time. I'd like to thank all of the speakers today: John, Adam, Francis, Alistair, the Lord Provost of Aberdeen, Bobby Gasai, the Energy Minister, Natural Resources in Guyana, and also Bobby with the University of Aberdeen hat on. We'll be back tomorrow for a second day, and today was about the story thus far and an update of where things are at. But tomorrow is about the future, and we're looking ahead. So a quick, we've just put up on the screen there who's speaking tomorrow. We will have the Director of Foreign Commonwealth Affairs for the Caribbean, Greg Quinn. We will have the Department of Industry and Trade, DIT. We'll have the Georgetown Chamber. We will have Nicholas from Guyana Oil and Gas Support Services. And we will have also some looking at the Norway and Shetland model of oil in the early days, and if there's any lessons there. So please, everyone's very welcome to join tomorrow, same time, 2 o'clock. Thank you for everyone's time, and huge thank you again to